Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is The Raptor, and before we knew it, we're reaching the end of Death Battle 2025. I hope everyone's had a great time with Independent Death Battle. I know I sure have, but now we can also start looking ahead to next year and coming up with some ideas. Being in this community is just a never-ending loop, isn't it? Last year, I specifically focused on episode predictions since we already knew so much of what was coming, and this year that applies to a much lesser extent, since we have Aang vs. Traveler, Gru vs. Megamind, the Champions Island matchup, and Light vs. Columbo as some kind of bonus thing, unless they surprise us and fit it in this year too. And maybe there will be more reveals later down the line, but it's no fun just waiting for that. So while it's probably impossible for Death Battle to have space for everything I say in this video, I wanted to go back to our roots and focus on personal ideas. Many of these will have some kind of reasoning for why I think they could happen in 2026, but first and foremost, these are just a handful of matchups that I like and would like to see in the near future, not outright predictions, although maybe that could come later depending on what happens. And as usual, I don't want to repeat any ideas I've brought up in my past ideas videos, but many of them I still very much hope for, and I wanted to make that clear, so there are links in the description if you want to hear more of my thoughts on those. But if you're here for the new ideas, let's rattle them off. First up, Monokuma vs. Korosensei. I think a good place to start is to see what the community responded well to in the Tournament of Champions, because Death Battle's obviously going to use that information. And out of all the remaining semi-finalists, this one seems to be the biggest on the crew's radar in recent years. It's a matchup I really grew to like as this year progressed, but it's also been very hyped up amongst fans for a pretty long time at this point. Now that the crew seems to know more about what these series entail, something about it just feels like now's the right time. Hell, you could even argue a commemoration for it, a new Danganronpa game's presumably releasing next year too. There are other matchups from the tournament that also did really well and I really like, such as X vs. Optimus Primal and especially Palpatine vs. Xehanort, but to me, this one deserves its time. Two new series, an incredibly unique fight dynamic, a debate that I think is worth having personally. As an idea at least, I am all in for this one. For idea number 2, the Knight vs. Ori. I don't know how likely it is that Death Battle will refer back to the champion ballot specifically right now. It was a longer time ago and had fewer matchups than the tournament. But looking back at what we've got left from that, this idea is no question my favorite. Finn and Jake vs. Mordecai and Rigby is also really good, although with both series getting new content pretty soon, I could see Death Battle maybe wanting to hold off a bit. And with Silksong having come out earlier this year, this might be the most relevant time to get to it in quite a while. I know there are other major indie game ideas like Sans vs. The Judge or Bendy vs. Cuphead. Yes, there are still people that want that one, but a lot of you guys know that this is the one I've been constantly backing. The visual potential both in and out of their platforming is frankly unmatched for its genre, with stories just as beautiful and worth sharing. Whether or not it was on the champion ballot, I'd probably put it on here anyway. It's just such an amazing concept to me. For idea number 3, Ed, and Eddy versus Yakko, Wakko, and Dot. I wanted to put a pitched matchup on here because I think Death Battle might get to at least 1 or 2 next year to show that it was indeed worth spending the money on. And my favorite ultra popular matchup from that list probably would have been Henry Stickmin versus the Second Coming, but with Henry just having been on Champions Island, I don't know if I would expect Death Battle to have already been planning that matchup for next year. So I decided to go with a simpler approach and pick my overall favorite one that I haven't covered yet, hence this one. I'm a huge Animaniacs guy and it's actually gotten new seasons, so again, as far as relevance goes, this feels like a good time. I don't think anyone's gonna disagree that the Eds are their best option by a long shot, and I think you need both full trios to get the most out of these characters. I wouldn't exactly bet on this happening over any other pitched matchup, but again, these are just ideas for the time being, and I think this is a damn good one. For idea number 4, Cyborg versus The Thing. I am quite positive that we're gonna see some kind of Fantastic Four matchup pop up in the near future. Falling in between First Steps and Doomsday feels like there's no better time to do one, and I think it's really between this matchup and Mr. Fantastic versus Mr. Terrific, the new big idea for Reed Richards. That would actually tie into the new Superman movie as well, so I could absolutely see Death Battle choosing it, but that's not what I went with here, even though I still like it. Cyborg vs. Thing has definitely been on the crew's radar for longer and they've said they're really into it. The characters are well known to basically everyone, and aside from all that, I've just been supporting it longer. Not everyone loves the idea, and that's okay, but the character-driven connections really sell it for me, and I need people to know how crazy strong these guys have gotten. It's honestly the most heart you can get out of a new Marvel vs. DC episode. I don't think that's an exaggeration. For idea number 5, Freddy Krueger versus Pennywise. It's clearer now than ever that Halloween episodes are here to stay, and I've usually been in Mysterio versus Scarecrow's corner, but at this point I think I gotta let that go for a little while. In fact, after getting a more comic-centric Halloween episode with Blade versus Buffy, I could see them going back to any media format with the next one. Maybe they'd want to bring in something different like creepypastas or SCPs, but I think it's just as likely, if not more, that they'll return to classic horror. Especially with how big this idea has become, and with Welcome to Derry just having come out, I have some real faith in it right now. I still love the idea, and I think it could avoid a lot of the issues people had with Jason vs. Michael, while going further with the craziness and actual scariness. That's how we make these better. Whether it's the next Halloween or the one after that or whatever, I see this episode as practically inevitable, and getting it sooner rather than later doesn't seem too far-fetched. For idea number 6, Joseph Joestar versus Johnny Cage. Now, let me give some extra context before I start. I would actually say Joseph is one of my most wanted characters to come onto Death Battle, but unlike Spider-Man or Spock, for instance, his matchup spread, in my opinion, is actually really decent. It's to the point where right now I wouldn't say I have a definitive preferred opponent for him, which is why I was really hoping for him to get on Champions Island. But Johnny Cage is one of my top contenders, and now that we're soon getting a Mortal Kombat movie that focuses on his introduction, this is a way I'd want to see him come back if Death Battle was doing it for that. They probably won't, but I still felt like bringing this up because it sounds super fun. There's quite a bit to their scaling that'd be cool to compare to each other. Ultimately, a good mix of action and humor. The main thing I want is a Joseph matchup that Death Battle knows how to do well, but if that took this form, I wouldn't be able to complain much, and I'm happy it's caught on with some other people too. For idea number 7, Punisher versus Judge Dredd. This is an idea that's existed for quite a long time, but somehow still feels a bit out of left field. I think it's because Death Battle isn't always known for using the widest variety of comic book publications, but now I'd say they're doing a little better with that, and this now seems a bit more likely. Not to mention this could also fall nicely between two big projects Punisher is in, Daredevil Born Again and Spider-Man Brand New Day. I bring up commemorations a bunch, and I know they don't guarantee anything, but it does give me some guidance for videos like this. I think it's a neat idea, especially in the sense of showing off how superhuman all the quote normal people are in comics, but also the similarities and differences in their morality. That's a good recipe for a well-rounded episode in my book, cool stuff to show off and arguably even cooler stuff to dissect of them as characters. I might have said Peacemaker versus Soldier Boy instead if I didn't think they might want to wait until after The Boys season 5 or more wraps up, so for now, I like this one just fine. For idea number 8, Asta versus Natsu. This is a matchup that I've been enlightened to relatively recently, and I've since been quite excited by the thought of it. I think a number of other anime matchups are much more likely realistically, like Naruto versus Luffy or Spike Spiegel versus Revy, both of which are really cool and I've brought up a lot. But this definitely feels like a double run back that's actually worth doing, and not just because they could both absolutely benefit from a second episode. Natsu especially has grown very much in power, frankly he's one of my most wanted returning combatants, and Asta's the main match for him that, to me, is really satisfying on most levels. It also puts Asta's anti-magic back into the conversation at least, and with Natsu's own magic and magic burning, I think that makes for a really enticing fight dynamic. I'm not here to say that it's perfect, but I am here to say that I really enjoy the idea right now, and if it just so happened to pop up soon, I'd be very hopeful seeing how it turns out. For idea number 9, Darth Maul versus Judge Gabranth, and I gotta be honest here, I have absolutely no reason to suspect this will happen in 2026 or even at all. There are so many other Star Wars or Final Fantasy matchups that would almost definitely happen first, and Maul himself has other options that are at least more popular. However, part of what this video allows me to do is talk about stuff that I haven't naturally gotten to before, so screw it, I'm a pretty big fan of this idea. It's the one Maul matchup that has the lowest amount of weak points to me. Pretty much all of the elements gel really well together, I think, and it's a unique enough series combination for me to be interested in Death Battle's interpretation, assuming of course that they stay more consistent with how they look at the Legends canon. The fight dynamic's flashy, the connections are solid, we get to see even more sides of Final Fantasy represented, and it honestly just vibes really well for me. I know it's not totally unpopular, but I do hope it catches on with more people. And finally, for idea number 10, Patrick Star versus Goofy Goof. Look, you all know Mickey vs. Bugs is my most wanted death battle, but I've talked about it so much and I could see them pushing it off a bit further. So let's shift gears and talk about a kind of similar idea that goes in a really different direction. Yes, this concept is very simple, but if you ask me, that's part of the whole point. The silly, clueless character archetype is one of the oldest to be found in all animation and arguably the most used one across it. It's one of those staples where I can't see how you don't eventually make a death battle around just that. And is there a better way to do it than by having the undisputed icons? It's also pretty well known by now and liked well enough by the death battle crew. It even got a cast episode some time ago, if you can believe it. So I see it as a possibility. I think the interactions and analyses could be funny as hell. And Death Battle, if you're somehow watching this, I'd be willing to perfect my Patrick impression if you really needed someone. Just saying. But anyway, guys, those are the main ideas I have for this coming year. I hope everyone can get behind at least a few of them, but either way, let me know any other ones you have. Click the video on your screen to see some of my previous ideas, and as always, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this and want to see more of the channel. I'm very excited to see how this year wraps up and what's in store for us as Independent Death Battle continues, but until then, I hope you all have a great day, and that I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.